Good morning. Today I'm going to talk about the NBA and NCAA's one and done rule that was set in place back in 2005. To give you a little more background on this rule, as I said, it was started in 2005, preventing high school players from jumping straight out of high school to the NBA and forcing them to kind of go to college for 1 year and play at least their freshman season before they're eligible to declare for the draft. This kind of set the minimum age requirement for players coming into the NBA at 19 years old. And as a sports management major here at Syracuse University and an avid NBA fan, I feel like I've gained the knowledge to talk about this topic and give my opinion on it. And that would be that I feel the NBA and NCAA one and done rule needs to be abolished because it negatively affects the players while only benefiting the NCAA. And some of the things I will talk about throughout the rest of this will be the alternative routes that players have to get into the NBA, the college basketball product, which has been ruined by this rule, and how players who are not being paid in college to play aren't willing to risk injury before they get into the NBA and they get that first contract. So, transitioning straight into my first point of alternative routes into the NBA, as there are several different alternative routes that players nowadays can take to be eligible for the draft and declare. And one of those big ones that a lot of players are starting to choose is the international route, as players will choose to go into European leagues in France, England, Spain, or in Asian Chinese basketball leagues and play there where they will get a contract and will be able to be paid to play in these leagues, and NBA scouts will watch them, and after a few seasons or maybe when their contract is up with these teams, they can then transition into the NBA and be drafted. Some can even be drafted during their contract, but a lot of issues come into play when that happens. You have to talk buyouts and certain things. But the international route has been a very common route that players are starting to take now. And in an article by Zion Olajide, he stated that we've seen stars develop internationally and straight from high school, from LeBron James and Dwight Howard making that direct leap from high school to Pau Gasol and Dirk Nowitzki making that roundabout leap overseas. They've all reached their potential without the middleman, the NCAA. As we can see, the NCAA is kind of what we're going to cut out, and no matter where these players are going to play and how they're getting the NBA, they're all getting their full potential and becoming these star players. So obviously, the NCAA isn't what's determining whether these players turn out to be stars or not. Another route that has just opened up recently is the NBA's G League, as this is a developmental league, kind of like a minor league for the NBA, in which players can join and earn contracts as well, and they'll play against other, obviously, players in the G League all around the United States, as almost all teams in the NBA have one of these G League affiliates, in which they put their developmental players into this before they sign them to big-time contracts in the NBA. And so obviously there's more alternatives, but these are the two main alternatives that players are starting to turn to nowadays to get into the NBA without having to go through that 1 year of college. As we talk about college basketball, this one and done rule is really ruining the college basketball product. As we see players, these high profile players that everyone's enjoying watching as freshmen, turn into such huge stars, and then they just leave, and teams have to kind of try and recuperate from this. As we saw, as Owen Phillips stated, in this past draft, 20 players under the age of 20 were drafted this summer. In fact, more teenagers were drafted this year than in 2005 when 17 and 18-year-olds were eligible. As you can see, that's a pretty crazy number to think that when high school players were able to come into the league, less risk coming into the league now when they have this one and done rule in place, and still more teenagers are flocking to the league because they feel that they're ready to play in the NBA and they don't want to stay in college where they don't get that money. And another thing it does is affects in the college basketball product is recruiting. Obviously, the teams with the best recruiting setup, such as Kansas, Duke, Kentucky, they're all teams that in recent years have dealt with the one and done players, a lot of freshmen getting drafted in the draft, and they just have such great recruiting that they just normally would take the best incoming freshmen, and it kind of just sets their team up the same way it was last year. But sometimes this can hurt a team, as stated by Brandon Fanny. He stated, on the other hand, losing your best player after only 1 year could cause a lack of cohesion and ultimately set a program back. The presence of one and done players might deter future recruits from joining a program because of the threat of a sharp decline in talent or potential lack of playing time. So as you can see, one and done players, not only is this rule affecting the product as a whole, but it's kind of causing a lot of players to second guess their decisions, and that's not what you want for college basketball, as you'll start to see a decline in the college basketball scenery and people watching because of this. So now I want to talk about injury, as this is the biggest thing on everybody's mind who is an athlete playing, and especially in college. Players can get injured in college, and it just ruins their future outlook into the NBA, because if it was a serious injury, a lot of players aren't able to rehab and come back the same way, and teams in the NBA look at that and they question whether or not to pick them. As seen in one situation, Deshaun Butler out of West Virginia, as this was a while back, John Antonik wrote, ever since leading West Virginia to the NCAA Final Four in 2010 and then seriously injuring his knee once he got there, Butler's basketball career has taken him to such faraway places as Belgium, France, and Germany. So as you can see, Butler was a top 10 player in the league. He was up for the Wooden Award that year and was for sure a first-round draft pick in 2010. But he had a devastating knee injury, which derailed his career, and since then he's been trying to do what he can to get back, but has been unsuccessful, as these type of injuries can occur at any time to anybody. So no one is, immune to this, and even the top player in the world coming out of college could have this happen, and their whole career will be ruined. And because players, who feel like they're one and done players, they just want to get in the NBA, they don't care about going to college, they don't have a backup plan set up for what they're going to do if they can't make it or after, in terms of how they're going to bring in income. And so these players are really just putting it all on the line here, in which they're earning no money, just the free chance to go to college, in which they're only going to be going for 1 year, and risking their health before they even get a chance to earn that first major contract in the NBA. Players need to start turning to alternative routes to avoid this one and done rule if they choose not to take it away, such as international leagues and the NBA's developmental league, the G League, as players aren't willing to risk injury in college before they're able to get that first contract and earn the money that they've been working so hard to gain throughout their career. And this really affects the college basketball product, because these one and done players are leaving after not even a full year of college, and it kind of just throws off team chemistry, and a lot of the times the best recruiters end up getting the best players, and that just happens year after year. So other teams don't really have too much of a shot going in.